Hey, Holy Readers, welcome back to Holy Holy. This is episode 46. I want to tell you guys, y'all are the greatest audience. You have been such a gift to me this year. You continue to amaze me with your engagement, with your reading every week. I want to encourage you, keep reading. Finish strong. The finish line is in our view. So press on towards the mark. And I believe that God is going to do miraculous things in and through you at the end of this year. So this week, we're going to talk about the reading from November the 11th to the 17th. So we're going to finish up Job this week. So that's Job 37 through 42. Then we have Psalm 149 and 124. This week, we read 1 Corinthians 12 through 16. So we finished that reading up this week, but we talked about it last week. And then this week, we read 2 Corinthians 1 through 13. So that's the whole book. Let's dive into Job and finish this book up today. So 37 through 42, these are the final chapters. And this is where God comes and he begins to speak to Job. And it's really, really powerful. We talked a little bit last week how chapter 37, this final speech of Elihu, was really setting the reader up and setting Job up to hear God's voice. So it starts shifting our focus to creation and the wisdom of God, the majesty of God, how God is so magnificent and in control and incomprehensible, right? That's kind of where we're shifting. So then in chapters 38 through 41, God speaks, and he speaks out of the whirlwind. This kind of gives me echoes of the time that the Lord spoke, it not in the fire, not in the whirlwind, but in the still small voice to Elijah. Do you remember that? But this time he does speak out of the whirlwind. I wish I really had time to break down this idea of whirlwind to you, because this idea of the wind of God, the pneuma, the breath of God, is really a powerful theme in our scriptures. But you've got this wind blowing, this breath, and then God breathes, God speaks. It's a really powerful moment. So God doesn't give Job a direct answer as to why Job is suffering. He doesn't say, you did this, so then you reaped this. But what he's shifting Job's focus to is just how big God is and how small Job is, that Job doesn't know all of the intricacies of God's plan. He doesn't know all of the nuances. And I think that that's really important for you and me to remember, that our suffering, especially when it's so deep and so personal, it feels like it's the whole world, right? We experience loss or grief or whatever, job distress or relational distress, and it feels like that's everything. But we are not the center of the universe. And that's hard for us to remember sometimes, that God is greater and he's working a bigger plan. So all we have to do is trust him and rely on him, even when we don't understand all of his ways and everything that he's doing. So the questions that God is asking Job, they highlight God's wisdom and power to manage the complexity of creation, right? And that God's understanding, what God understands, it's beyond what you and I could ever understand. So then in Job 42, then Job responds back. And he responds back with humility. And I want to tell you that God can't resist humility. He can't resist it. That when we have acted crazy, or we have acted out, or we don't understand, or we've raged maybe at times in all of our frustration against the Lord, that if we come back with humility and say, God, I don't understand, but I trust you and I love you, God can't resist it. It welcomes him into the situation. And this is what happens. This is so powerful, that God then addresses the friends. He addresses Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar, and Elihu. And he's unhappy with the way that they've treated Job. And he tells Job to pray for them. That's really powerful. I want you to think about this, that Job doesn't know what's about to happen. You and I know what's about to happen, that God is about to restore everything, give him double. Job doesn't know that. He doesn't know what's coming. So here in this moment, they have talked so bad about him. They have accused him, berated him, kind of even lied on him, when Eliphaz told all these specific things, when he accused Job of these specific things. So then for Job to stand there and to pray a blessing on them, that is so powerful, friend, that God heals us when we do those kinds of acts. I believe that prayer where Job had to pray blessing on his friends that had so mistreated him, that was probably as healing to Job as all of the restoration of the physical things that Job received. And the only way for God to heal these deep wounds in our heart is for us to come at the Lord humbly, and then to pray for those that have accused us and abused us and mistreated us. Doesn't it say that in Luke, to pray for those that have wrongfully misused you? That's what Job does here. So then, that's when God, so great, he restores Job's fortunes. He gives him more children. He gives him twice what he lost, which is really powerful. This restoration symbolizes God's ultimate blessing and favor. But it doesn't provide the straightforward answer. And and maybe you want the straightforward answer. Job, you did this. That's why this happened. God doesn't give that. But he shifts this focus from why Job is suffering to who is in control. A lot of times when you and I suffer, we want to be in control. Have you ever seen people that things are going out of their control in their life, so they control something really minute because they're like, this is the one thing that I can put my finger on and control. And so it's not about it's not about why we're suffering, but to remember to rely on God, that God sees, he hears, he knows, and he is at the helm of our life. So true faith is found in trusting in God's wisdom, even when we have an absence of answers. So kind of picking up on this theme is Psalm 124. This is, again, a psalm of ascent. So this is what they're going to sing as they ascend the mountain. And it starts with, had it not been the Lord who is on our side. And then later he says, our help is in the name of the Lord. And so this is emphasizing total reliance on God. If God had not been on our side, we would have failed. We would have been crushed. We would have been annihilated. We would have never made it back. But the Lord is on our side. The Lord is on your side today, friend. Even if you don't see it or you don't feel it, that God is working. Reminds me, I think I've sang it to you before. Even when I don't see it, he's working. Even when I don't feel it, he's working. He never stops working. And if you can't see it or feel it today, I want you to know that God is working on your behalf. He is dependable. He's trustworthy. He's faithful. Quickly, let's finish with 2 Corinthians. So this was written by the Apostle Paul between 55 and 57 AD. It addresses the church at Corinth. So after 1 Corinthians, there were all these challenges, divisions, moral issues, and misunderstandings. And so Paul wrote like a severe letter, is what he calls it, in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4. So then Paul sends Titus to reconcile the Corinthians, because the Corinthians are not happy with Paul. So Titus is trying to reconcile these two, right? And which Paul loves the Corinthians, but that's why he's saying the hard thing. When you love people, sometimes you have to say the hard thing. So Titus brings back news that the Corinthians have repented, and it brings so much joy to Paul's heart. So he writes this letter. Let's break it down into 5 sections. We've got the introduction and thanksgiving in chapters 1, verses 1 through 11, Paul's ministry and apostolic authority in 2 Corinthians 1, 12 through 7:16. Generosity and giving in 8, 1 through 9:15. Defense of apostleship and spiritual warfare in 10, 1 through 13:10. And then closing remarks and benediction in chapters 13, verses 11 through 14. One of the things that I think is really interesting that Paul highlights here in this letter is spiritual warfare, that our weapons are not worldly, but they are divinely powerful, that God is empowering us, right? It's a divine empowerment to accomplish all that God has purposed for us to accomplish over the powers of evil that rule in the world. So another thing that Corinthians addresses, the themes would be reconciliation, humility, and then strength through weakness. So I want to tell you today, keep reading, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. And I'll see you here next week. Email me at jasmine@regenerationnashville.org. Find us on Apple and Spotify, YouTube and Facebook. Share it. Listen, our audience is growing. This is catching like fire. So share it, tell your friends. I'll see you next week. God bless.